Behold Anubis, god of judgment. No gold can buy the truth. Nebamon was the kind of man who could make a half-broken jug sound like a treasure from the court of Amenhotep. Broad of belly, quick of tongue, and shrewder than a scribe with 2 abacuses, he ruled his market stall like a general on campaign. His bracelets clinked softly when he gestured, which was often, and his linen robe was just expensive enough to hint at wealth, without ever suggesting generosity. The morning sun over Memphis gleamed off jars of spice, bolts of linen, and papyrus scrolls displayed in careful disorder. Customers flowed around him like water around a well-placed rock. Nebamon would greet each one with an expansive smile, a gentle tap on the chest, and a whispered, "Special price just for you." He spoke of scarcity as if it were a personal tragedy, of bargains as though he were doing charity work. He had the rare talent of making every customer feel clever for being tricked. And when they left, lighter of purse and heavier of goods, Nebamon's heart swelled, not with joy, but with the comfortable weight of copper coins. By mid-morning, the market was boiling with noise. Donkeys brayed, traders shouted, the Nile wind carried the scent of spice and fish. And there stood Nebamon, arms spread, smile sharp as a scribe's reed pen, selling like a man born 2,000 years too soon. He waved an amphora at a doubtful sailor and declared, "This isn't just a jar. This is a lifestyle investment, limited edition. If you don't buy now, 10 other discerning investors will snatch it up before noon." When the sailor hesitated, Nebamon leaned in confidentially, lowering his voice to a silky purr. "Listen, my friend, you're not just buying clay. You're buying prestige. Status. This amphora will appreciate in value. Trust me. I know a guy in Thebes who flips these for twice the price." He snapped his fingers at a passing boy to bring a scale. "And because you look like someone who appreciates quality craftsmanship, I'll give you the exclusive launch discount." The sailor blinked. Nebamon delivered the final blow with a dramatic flourish of his crimson sash. "Like and subscribe to my stall, and I'll throw in a free scoop of imported cumin." The sailor, too confused to object, handed over the coins. Nebamon chuckled softly to himself. Business was good. By the time the temple scribe arrived, Nebamon was in what he liked to call his peak negotiation flow. He greeted the man with a booming, "My friend, my favorite bringer of bad news," and tried to usher him toward the cheapest spice in the shop. The scribe, a lean man with the dead eyes of someone who had heard every excuse in Egypt, raised a clay tablet and said flatly, "Your contribution to the House of Thoth is overdue." Nebamon clutched his chest like a tragedian. "Overdue? Impossible. I'm a pillar of the community, a humble servant of divine accounting." He swept his arm toward his wares as if unveiling a masterpiece. "Does wisdom itself not smile when I haggle? Surely Thoth doesn't need my modest donation. He's a god. I'm just a simple—" He lowered his voice dramatically. "Small business owner, struggling against the forces of bureaucracy." The scribe blinked slowly, unimpressed. Nebamon tried again. "How about a flexible payment plan? Perhaps a—" He wiggled his fingers like a magician. "Mutually beneficial strategic partnership with the divine?" The scribe merely set the tablet down on the counter, the numbers carved into it like a death sentence for unpaid taxes, and walked away. Nebamon exhaled through his nose. "They can't tax genius," he muttered. "Can they?" That night, under the soft silver light of the moon, Nebamon transformed from charming salesman into something far more dangerous, an amateur accountant. He shuffled around his warehouse like a crocodile on tiptoe, muttering to himself in a rapid, suspicious whisper, "Liquid assets, hidden reserves, optimized papyrus-based storage solutions." He pried open a crate of amphorae, stuffed his best linen rolls behind barrels of fish oil, and carefully balanced a stack of spice jars on top like a man building a fragile empire. Every so often, he paused to look at his handwritten inventory, a list that owed nothing to accuracy and everything to creative fiction. The gods can't tax what they can't find, he whispered proudly to his cat, who yawned and looked unimpressed. He straightened the red cap on his head and wagged a finger at the moon. Thoth himself would respect this strategy. It's brilliant. It's elegant. It's completely undetectable. A papyrus scroll slipped off the shelf and landed on his foot. He cursed softly. Operational hazard, he muttered. The next day began like any other. Nebeman haggled, lied, and made 3 perfectly legal sales that were only mostly illegal. But by noon the wind changed. A hot, dry breath blew down the river, rattling the awnings of his stall and making the hanging amphory sway. Nebeman glanced up from counting coins, always twice, sometimes 3 times, and felt an unfamiliar twinge in his stomach. Not guilt, something worse, dread. Then came the first sign. A boat, laden with goods he'd sent south a week ago, limped into the harbor, hull cracked, its cargo soaked. Nebeman rushed to the dock, arms flapping like an outraged ibis. No, 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 this is bad for branding, he shouted. The sailor only shrugged. The second sign followed minutes later. His best shipment simply didn't return. Nebeman stared down the Nile as if he could glare it back upstream. Around him, the market went on as usual, but the wind whistled his name, or so it seemed, curling around the amphory like a whispering creditor. He forced a laugh, adjusted his red cap, and told himself the obvious lie. Coincidence. All coincidence. The gods have bigger fish to tax, but the coins in his hand felt just a little colder. By nightfall, Nebeman's confidence had begun to curdle into something far less comfortable. He paced around his courtyard like a tax collector haunted by his own ledger, whispering numbers under his breath and convincing himself everything was fine. 2 boats missing? That's market fluctuation. The wind? Natural phenomenon. The faint smell of incense? Probably me. Then the brazier flames shifted. Not flickered. Shifted, all at once, toward the western wall. Nebeman froze, scroll still in hand. The air grew dense, the kind of silence that weighs more than it should. From the shadows behind his precious amphorae, something moved. Not like a thief, not like a guard, but like someone who belonged there more than he did. A jackal's silhouette stretched long against the stone. Nebeman's mouth went dry. Anubis, my dear, dear friend. Business associate, he stammered. If this is about the, paperwork, very fluid situation, entirely fixable. The jackal-headed god did not reply. He didn't need to. His golden eyes fixed on Nebeman with the patience of someone who has been watching for a very long time. A single amphora cracked under its own weight, and for the first time in years, Nebeman actually stopped talking. Nebeman would later swear that the god did not move, and yet somehow he was suddenly closer. The golden eyes hovered just above his own, cold and calm, like they had always known this moment was coming. The brazier hissed as the air itself grew heavier. Nebeman's lips moved before his brain could stop them. This is about the tax, isn't it? He tried to laugh, the same oily chuckle that had gotten him out of 100 tight corners, but the sound came out thin and trembling. It's not that I don't want to pay, mighty Anubis, he said, hand fluttering nervously toward his chest. It's just timing, liquid assets, supply chain disruptions, you understand. He gestured vaguely toward the sky, as if blaming the gods themselves for his accounting. The jackal god simply tilted his head, a single slow movement that carried the weight of eternity. Then Anubis raised a hand, long fingers wrapped in shadow, and extended a single golden scale. It shimmered in the brazier light, flawless, waiting. Nevermon knew at once what it meant. There was no threat, no roar, no fire, just the kind of silence that crushes excuses into dust. His knees buckled as if someone had quietly pulled the ground away from under him. "All right," he whispered, clutching his chest. "Maybe, just a small contribution," his voice cracked. "Or, you know, the full amount." The jackal's glowing eyes narrowed a fraction, and the brazier flared like a satisfied breath. Nevermon bowed lower than he ever had in his life, and for the first time in years he stopped calculating. The next morning the market saw a changed man. Nevermon marched through the harbor with the stiffness of someone who'd had a long, very honest conversation with eternity. His red cap was crooked, his eyes ringed with sleeplessness, but in his arms he carried a heavy basket brimming with silver rings and fine linen. He plowed through the early traders like a barge through the Nile, muttering to himself, "Full payment, prompt payment, best payment ever." The priest at the temple gate barely had time to open his mouth before Nevermon slammed the offering down on the polished stone. "For Anubis," he announced dramatically, loud enough for half the city to hear. "Because some of us actually believe in the rule of law." Behind him, 2 merchants stared, jaws slack. "Nevermon, the tightest purse in all of Memphis, paying voluntarily?" One whispered. "Did the tax collector get him?" Another replied, "Worse." "The gods did." Nevermon ignored them both. Back straight, face solemn, he didn't dare look at the brazier. But deep inside, a tiny, terrified part of him whispered, maybe that would be enough. By evening, Nevermon was pacing again, but this time it wasn't fear making him sweat. It was ambition. He clapped his hands, startling his long-suffering cat. "If I give the gods more," he declared to no one in particular, "they'll reward me with more. It's divine interest, a flawless investment strategy." He dragged out his remaining valuables, fine linen bolts, gold bangles, a jar of imported oil he swore he'd never touch. He piled them into a chest with the enthusiasm of a man already spending profits he hadn't earned. "Anubis will be impressed," he muttered, eyes glittering. "He'll say, 'Nevermon, brilliant merchant, visionary of Memphis, here, have a mountain of gold.'" The cat yawned. Nevermon didn't notice. He was too busy rehearsing his acceptance speech for his imagined divine fortune, pacing in front of the brazier like a man possessed by both greed and optimism. "Nevermon the Magnificent," he said aloud, spreading his arms. "Pharaoh will come for loans." That night, Nevermon slept like a man who'd already spent a fortune he didn't yet have. His hands twitched on the linen sheets as if still counting coins in his dreams. The brazier had burned low, its last embers pulsing like quiet laughter. In his dream, the courtyard stretched into something vast and endless, paved with shining gold. Mountains of silver rose on either side, and a river of coins flowed like the Nile itself. Nevermon waddled through it with arms wide, laughing the kind of laugh only a man who's never actually seen this much money can manage. "Divine interest," he cried. "It's real." And then, on the far bank, Anubis appeared, tall, still, jackal eyes gleaming. The god said nothing. He didn't need to. A single gold coin fell from Nevermon's hand, sank into the golden river, and vanished. One by one, the rest followed, dissolving into the sand. Nevermon's grin melted too. By the time he reached for the riches, the courtyard was empty again. Only Anubis remained, watching in silence. When Nevermon woke, sweat on his brow, the cat was sitting on his chest, unimpressed. He sighed, and for once didn't reach for his ledger, and the jackal spoke. A tale of ancient Egypt.